Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Insight to Action. I'm happy to be joined by my guest, Andrea Syrtash, who is coming live on tape from Brooklyn, if I'm not mistaken now. Not New York, I want to say Brooklyn. I'm not going to quiz anyone on how many boroughs there are. Another topic for another day. Andrea is currently the founder of Pregnant-ish, but I know that your background is wide and very rich. Maybe you could just step us through before we get started into some of the questions that I've got for you, is to the multitude of success that you've had. I know you're an author, and I know you've done a tremendous amount of TV work. How would you summarize, just to kind of give a quick little background of yourself?
Well, it's a good question because I often say I'm a slasher. Many slashes in my title of my job.
Yes, me too.
And we were doing that, Matt, before it kind of became cool to do that, because I've been working for myself. Years after I graduated college, I launched into this. And I created a personal brand before Instagram and YouTube and personal branding was a thing. I remember deciding, from a friend said to me, your URL should be AndreaSyrtash.com. And I said, really, my name? And she said, yeah, you're doing so many things as Andrea Syrtash. Why not be a personal brand? And it was kind of newish at this time. This was in 2005. How would I describe myself? I went to school for broadcast journalism. I knew I was really interested in storytelling and, getting to the source and finding what motivated people and capturing stories. What I didn't know when I started as a journalist was that my beat, which means like what I'd focus on the most, would be relationships. And not just romantic relationships. I've written books about in-laws. I've written about friendships. I've written about love and divorce and dating and everything in between. And I realized, quickly into my career, there's nothing more important in the world than relationships. It's literally what people think of when they're dying. What do they wish to do is spend time with people they care about. And so my first job that I got paid for, that I cared about, that wasn't, after school and something that was just for money, was I worked on a book called How to Survive the Real World, Life After College. That was in 2005 or 6. From there, I worked on How to Survive Your In-Laws and How to Survive Dating. These were 3 titles that were kind of in my contract with this publisher. I was assigned as a journalist to interview all these people to get the answers of how they survived these life chapters. And in, I want to say 2006, 2007, I was on live radio, and the DJ said, we're so happy to have a dating expert here in the studio. And I joke about this a lot, but it's a true story. I thought, that's really cool. There's a dating expert here. And I paused, and he said, Andrea Syrtash, welcome. And that launched my career as a relationship expert. That was already, we're talking over, it was over 15 years ago, right? I could quick math here. Anyway, it was a while ago. So about 15 years ago. And I, ever since, have been passionate about helping people navigate relationships. Like you said, I've written books. I've hosted television shows for Oprah Network and Fox and TLC. I've done a lot of digital content before it was kind of cool. I hosted a show called On Dating for NBC in 2008, and it was NBC Digital, and no one knew what a digital video really was. So some of the episodes were like 9 minutes long. We didn't realize they should probably be shorter. But I was really, my career was launched as a journalist and evolved very organically, both 2 pieces, I'd say, both to do with my skill set, what kind of clicked for me naturally as a communicator and storyteller, and also with where I was at the right time, the right place in media. I got to New York in 2006, and I immediately got this job to write a dating column for Yahoo and host this dating show for NBC Digital, and those were big names, so that led to a lot more. Where I am today, because I'm trying to summarize so many years quickly, is
That's a loaded question.
Well, it's a fun question to think about how to say that succinctly, and it's too late, I know. But Pregnant-ish was launched in 2017 as the first non-medical site, so the first lifestyle relationship site to help people with infertility and modern family building. I started to see, as a relationship expert, trends like egg freezing was going up, and people were writing me, how do I date and freeze my egg? What do I tell my date? And then people would write me, I've gone through miscarriage and loss and infertility and IVF, and it's really hard to keep sex sexy. What do I do? And I realized this is a relationship chapter we're not talking about a lot. And I had been going through a struggle behind the scenes with my husband. So Pregnant-ish is the newest extension of my relationship brand, but I'm still very much in the relationship world. Fertility is connected to sex and relationships. Who knew? But so it's still in that. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And there was something, Andrea, that I wanted to pick up on. I listened to everything. At least I do my best to do that. But there's something you said on the very, very front end that I want to pick up on and maybe have you just add your personal thoughts to it. And that is, when you said, hey, I had my own site, my own brand before that was a thing. Now, when it comes to branding, it's a big piece of what we do at Talk Shop, specific to my college students that I work with. And that is, how do you brand yourself? And I'll just kind of tee this up. I'll tee the question up of, look, I always tell people to get in the mindset of be your own CMO. And a lot of people may not know what that business acronym is quite yet if they're a freshman with Chief Marketing Officer, because no one's going to protect your brand any better than you can yourself. So when it comes to branding, that was something that I heard you say. So I want to ask you, for what guidance would you give today's college students? If there's someone's in graphic design, or if they're a writer, or if they're in media, obviously that kind of speaks for itself. They've got their reel or their portfolio. But if it's just a college student that isn't quite sure what industry they're going into, but they know they need to brand themselves somehow, both digitally and in person, what kind of guidance or advice would you suggest? Maybe there's a 3-point answer to that, or whatever it might be. I'll let you just give me your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, I think it's so important to brand yourself in a way that feels authentic. So first of all, people can sniff authenticity a mile away. I did a TEDx talk you can look up, called How to Make Love Outside the Bedroom, all about how to be your best self in relationships. And one of the pieces was about how much people connect with authenticity. So whatever you do, the first step to being a personal brand or your own brand is step into who you are, and some questions to consider, because I'm also a trained coach. So I used to coach people with these questions. If time and resources weren't an issue, what would you be doing? What motivates you? What do people tell you you're good at? What do you work on first, even in school? Like, what assignments you want to tackle first? Those give you some clues into what you're good at and what you should be focusing on. And in terms of marketing yourself beyond being authentic, which I think is number one. So truly, whatever voice, don't try to be someone else with even the way you communicate, because people can sniff that. But beyond that, I think, knowing that it can evolve, you're not, you're going to discover things through life that you don't know in year one. If I put up AndreaSyrtash.com, here are all the things I do and who I am, and I couldn't edit it, that would have been a problem, because you're going to iterate, just like any project kind of goes through different chapters. You're going to grow into who you are and what your brand is through experiences and connections and relationships. So you can say the kernel if I had to ask someone, like, who are you at your core? What are some attributes? What are some of your strengths? That's what you want to highlight. But just know that we can be flexible. We don't need it set in stone. If you have a URL with your name, you can update it every few months if you need to. And I think it's so important when you start your brand or your business or your life after college to know that you're growing into your best self. So you don't need all the answers right away.
And I like that because I always ask like either it's professors or hiring managers this question. I'm not necessarily asking it to you unless you'd like to answer it, but I would say, hey, look, what's your personal take when a college student comes up to you and says, oh, I'll just do anything. I just want to get in. I'll do anything. Some people really like that. It shows that there's a desire to learn. Or, hey, look, you got to give me something to work with. At least give me
Right.
2 or 3 areas that you have an interest in. So I don't know if you want to answer that question. If you have a personal
It's a
take.
good one. I mean, it's good to be enthusiastic. So from your question, keep that side, but you don't want to, it's confusing for people to know how to hire you or work with you when you're too open-ended. So you might say, I'm really passionate about blank. My skill sets are blank. I'm interested in blank, just to like fill in those 3 blanks. And I'm a motivated and driven person, and I'm excited to contribute and learn. It's okay to tell someone you're excited to grow with them also.
Yeah, I didn't mean to throw that at you. That was just kind of came up because your point, I'm just going to give you a nod and complete approval that, look, it's not going to be perfect. Your resume, your LinkedIn, whatever it is, it is going to evolve into your, as you grow. So I completely understand and agree with that comment. The other question I wanted to ask you is what inspires you in terms of how someone approaches you? For example, let's just say it's someone could be from your high school or someone from your college. That's your alma mater. There's probably some things that capture Andrea Syrtash's attention, whether it's a subject line, if it's an email, or if it's a phone, if it's a voicemail message, or if they're actually getting with you live over FaceTime. When it's a college student and they're reaching out to you, and they're probably, a lot of them are probably, I'm going to say it because you're humble, they're probably awestruck. They're actually getting with you. Now they've got the opportunity to present themselves the right way to you. What captures your attention?
I don't know if they're awestruck, but thank you. But what I do
they
know,
are.
Well, what I do know is I get so many emails, especially when I've been on a show or I used to write a column for Glamour. I would just get inundated with pitches. It's hard to keep up. So know that it's not always personal if someone doesn't get back to you right away. In fact, my manager now kind of checks my inbox sometimes because I can't respond to everything that comes in. What I do notice is if someone shares a specific, the same goes for online dating, by the way. I always say specifics make you stand out. So something about that you read, that I wrote, or that you appreciated, just tying it back so that it's not a general, oh, my name's been copied and pasted, someone had a template. That just doesn't stand out. I also think you have to consider what you're asking for. I've had emails, can you call me for an hour? I can't. I mean, I literally can't. I don't have time to do that. I have a toddler. I have a busy career. I would love to. I just can't. But what I can do, someone said, I'm working on a dissertation. I'm working on a paper for school. I'd love a quote for this piece from you on COVID and relationships. I had that recently. I was happy to give a quote, So if it's not only recognizing something specific about the person you're reaching out to, just to show you know who they are, but also a specific request that doesn't take the busy person, everyone's busy, we know that, too much time to respond to is better bet of getting the person's attention.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. There's such a, maybe in the high school more than there is the college student, this apprehension around having just, let alone easy conversations, but for sure having a hard conversation seems to be just dissipating by the hour. I know that sounds very negative, and it's not. It's just, there's the devices, the tablets, the screens, there's apps. That's way that kids are communicating. On one end, they do a great job. They're communicating all the time. But without the depth and scope that a real conversation and the back and forth and the listening that's required to have, maybe, let's say what you and I are having, a conversation. So I guess my question, that was more of a statement. My question that's wrapped up into that is, what do you personally either see through your own eyes, whether it's high school or college students, or maybe in just the professional realm, adults, in terms of what's at stake? Do you see the art and science, if you will, of having a back and forth natural conversation dissipating? What do you think is at stake for high school and college students today?
Yeah, I think obviously we don't have as much attention as we used to for obvious reasons. I mean, if we're watching like TikTok and clips that are so super fast and
Right.
charged and sensational, it may seem kind of boring to have these drawn out anything. But this is where connections and relationships happen. And I think it's really active listening more than talking is a really important skill set. People want to be seen, heard, and valued. That's relationships 101. So you can't be an opera singer, me, when you are presenting to someone. You want to engage them with questions. I'm sure you teach this, Matt, in Talk Shop. Like you need almost like a tennis match. It needs to go back and forth in an organic way. Also, you can tell when someone just has 5 questions they've thought of and they're not listening before they get to the next. That's not going to fly. So active listening means, I may even switch what I was going to ask you now that I've heard you state something. It's really being mindful about the information you're taking in before you give more information.
No, and I agree. Listening is, I always tell during my workshops, listening is the hard part because it takes patience, and we're a rather impatient society because of attention spans, for sure. Talking is the easy part. We're just repeating what we already know in our heads. But listening is, I think, a piece, it's people don't realize how important component that is to having a conversation. So I'll just wrap up with this, and I know, go ahead. Did you want to add something?
That's okay. There is a famous book, you may have talked about it before, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Now, this book's almost 100 years old, but guess what? Aristotle, long time before that, these are the same principles, which is people are impressed by people who are impressed by them, is like a consistent thread. So if you remember nothing else, it's my attention is on you, not just on how great I am.
Yeah, and there's so many analogies, right? You'll get it, the next person will get it. It's like, whether it's a cocktail party, or you're at a wedding reception or whatever it is, and you're always looking over someone's shoulder, opposed to just looking at someone and having that conversation. So there's, multitude of analogies, but yes, just be there, be present, right? I know that sounds horribly cliche, but it is, listening to someone else is so lost right now. And that's a big piece. I know that sounds like I'm looking at this from a negative perspective. It's just, no, it's an area to develop that'll help build your relationships. In this case, my case, business, in your case, personal, but it's across the board. Relationships happen by way of conversation. So I think that's something that you could agree on for sure, regardless whether it's personal or romantic relationship.
Well, it is in business for me. I have a startup. Relationships are everything.
Absolutely.
And business and personal do mix. It's not true that don't make business personal. We're people. So
right. It's the human connection. The last question I wanted to ask, and I know it's a little bit of a magic wand, so hopefully it's not too broad, but if there was whether you want to look at it this way, in terms of, hey, what would you tell, your 18, 19-year-old self? What advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now? Or you can just say, hey, look, I'm not going to go there, but I will offer, this piece of advice that I know I've just learned to be true through everything that you've done and the success that you've, reached and you're continuing to get to. What advice would you give to today's college students, just as it relates to getting as career ready as possible? I know that's a really broad question, but what comes to mind from your gut to that?
I think what comes to mind is basically don't put so much pressure on yourself to have all the answers now, because you're going to do better when you don't have all the answers and you're actively listening and learning. What you should know, and what I would tell myself at 18, 19 is, I will say the most confusing time for me was my 20s, my early 20s. I remember my password on my email was clarity. By the way, I wrote an article about this, and then my husband said, you should change your password because you totally announced your password to everyone. But I was so cloudy in my relationship and my work life and my everything, like what city I should be in, what career I should take, and I thought I needed to have all the answers between like 18 and 24. And that's the time of exploration. That's the time when, it's okay. It's not only not needed to have all the answers, it's great not to have all the answers, because then you're open to the possibilities. But again, to your point, Matt, to be your own CMO, you want to know what makes you tick as much as possible, so you're not wasting time as you're trying on all different things for size. If the last thing you ever do at school is blank, that's probably not a career you're going to pursue. So think about what makes you tick, and then know that you don't need to have all the answers. And that would have helped me as a 18 to 20 something year old, because I think I put a lot of pressure on myself when I didn't know.
That is fair. I always like to end with that, just because some people like to say, hey, this is what I would tell my 18-year-old self. Some people answer that in kind of funny way, like, hey, good job. Hey, that's what I tell myself. Good job. Look what I've been able to achieve. Pat yourself, or someone's, or constructive criticism or feedback. So that's why I let people answer the way they would like. Cool. So I don't think that you need any promotion, but I'd like to give it to you anyway. If you'd like to drive people to your website, if there's an initiative that you'd like to put out there, anything you would like to share, by all means.
Should I tell you, or should I write you? You want me to answer it now?
If you are comfortable, if you want to, obviously people see your name on the screen now, and they could probably put one and one together, because I believe your website was yourname.com. So we could leave it at that. If there was anything else, like, hey, this is an initiative I'm working on, this is a recent book that just came out that you want to point people to.
Thank you. I beyond Pregnantish, which is the other site, AndreaSyrtash.com and Pregnantish, I'm working on this really fun program with Purina right now, which sounds really random, but they have a new cat food that
I love it.
That reduces allergens on cats. And I think it's a relationship game changer. So I'm going to be in the media soon talking about that. So just follow me on Andrea in NY on Instagram to get these kind of updates, more than even on my website, because social media, my Twitter is my name, is where I post more in real time.
Perfect. And I'm going to put that all in the show notes. So once people see this, they'll have it in writing. They'll have a way to check out all the great things that you've done, and more importantly, the great things that are coming. So Andrea Syrtash, thank you so much for sharing some great insight. I know students can put it to use. I want to thank you so much for sharing it with me as well.
Good luck, everyone.